The night air smelled like rain and gasoline when the blue lights first reflected off the cracked window of Marcus Cole's old pickup truck. It was just another quiet evening in Stonebridge, Alabama, the kind where porch lights flickered, dogs barked from backyards, and families gathered inside for dinner. But in that moment, everything normal about the night collapsed into sirens and shadows. "Don't you move, sir!" One of the officers shouted, his voice cutting through the drizzle like broken glass. Marcus froze, his hands still gripping the steering wheel, knuckles pale against the leather. He was a large man, built like a tank 6'4", thick around the middle, with the quiet strength of someone who'd seen war and learned never to show fear. To any other man, he looked like a tired father coming home from work. But to these cops, he was a target before he even spoke a word. "Evening, officers," he said calmly, his deep voice steady as he rolled the window down. "Is there a problem?" The younger cop, jittery and pale, kept his hand on his weapon. The older one, a sergeant with a sharp jaw and eyes full of arrogance, stepped closer. "License and registration," he barked. Marcus handed them over without a word. He could feel the rain dripping down the back of his neck, mixing with the tension in the air. He didn't need to see the badge to know what kind of night this was going to be. "Step out of the vehicle," the sergeant ordered. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why?" "Because I said so." Behind the cruiser, another police car pulled up, then another. Lights flashed across the wet road like a disco of distrust. Inside the truck, his phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Sharon. "Babe, where are you?" "The kids are waiting." He typed back quickly. "Just pulled over. Don't worry. Be home soon." He didn't know that by the time she read that message, the story would already be on social media. Hook. To everyone watching this, stop scrolling. What happens next will make you question everything about justice, power, and what it really means to protect your family. Hit subscribe now, because stories like this real or not show how the wrong assumptions can turn a hero into a suspect overnight. Marcus stepped out of the truck slowly, hands raised. The rain picked up, turning the asphalt slick under the flashing red and blue lights. "Spread your legs." "Hands on the hood," the sergeant said. Marcus did as told. He had learned long ago that the best way to survive was to comply at least for now. But his instincts were alive, calculating every move. The air felt charged like the seconds before a battlefield ambush. "You matching a description," the sergeant muttered as he patted him down. "Fat black male, late 30s, driving an old pickup. Said he was seen leaving a robbery near the Quick Mart." Marcus exhaled slowly. "That's not me." "Yeah, we'll see about that." One of the other officers, a rookie with wide eyes, walked around the truck, shining his flashlight inside. Sarge?" "There's kids' toys and a Bible. Doesn't look like—" "Shut it," the sergeant snapped. He turned back to Marcus, smirking. "Where you coming from, big man?" "Work," Marcus said. "I'm a construction foreman out by the ridge." "Construction, huh?" The sergeant circled him, eyeing his solid frame. "You sure that's all you do?" Marcus looked him dead in the eyes. "That's all you need to know." The sergeant sneered. "You got an attitude problem, son." Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "I'm not your son." The tension thickened. Another flash of lightning illuminated Marcus's calm, unreadable expression, an expression trained by years in classified combat operations overseas. If only they knew who they were talking to. They had no idea that Marcus Cole wasn't just a foreman. He was a retired Delta Force commander, one of the most decorated covert operatives in modern U.S. military history. But he'd left that life behind after losing too many brothers in wars no one remembered. Now, all he wanted was peace, a quiet life with his wife Sharon and their two kids, Malik and Grace. But peace, it seemed, didn't want him. The sergeant leaned close, his breath hot and sour. "You think you can talk back to me, big man?" Before Marcus could reply, the sergeant slammed his hand against the hood. "You fit the damn description, and that's enough for me." The other officers shifted uneasily. "Sarge, maybe we should call it in?" "I said cuff him." Marcus didn't resist. He could have, easily. He could have disarmed all three of them before they blinked. But he wasn't that man anymore. He was the father of 2 children who needed him alive. Still, as the cold metal cuffs bit into his wrists, something deep inside him stirred, a dormant, disciplined rage he hadn't felt since the desert. When they shoved him into the back seat of the cruiser, he saw Sharon's name flash again on his phone, still on the truck's dashboard. He couldn't answer. "Dispatch, this is Unit 14, the sergeant said into the radio. "We've got a possible 211 suspect in custody. Fat black male, heavy build, resisting." Marcus's head snapped up. "Resisting?" "You keep quiet," the sergeant hissed, slamming the door shut. The rain turned to a storm. At home, Sharon stood in the kitchen, staring at her phone, reading his last message again and again. She was used to Marcus being late. Construction ran long sometimes, but something about tonight felt wrong. The kids were upstairs, Malik playing video games, Grace drawing pictures at her desk. She called his phone. No answer. Then again. Still nothing. Minutes later, her friend Darlene texted, "Girl, turn on Channel 7. I think I just saw Marcus." Sharon's heart dropped. She turned on the TV, and there was grainy footage of Marcus, hands cuffed behind his back, rain dripping off his shoulders as 2 officers shoved him into a police car. The news anchor's voice was steady, almost detached. "Local man detained tonight in connection with an armed robbery investigation. Authorities have not released his name, but everyone in Stonebridge knew that face." Sharon's hands trembled. "Oh my God," she whispered, grabbing her keys. "Kids, get your coats." Back at the precinct, Marcus sat in a cold interrogation room, still dripping wet. The cuffs had been removed, but the bruises on his wrists were red and angry. Across the table, the sergeant sat with a smug grin, flipping through a folder that was clearly empty. "So," the sergeant said, "you got quite the record here, construction worker, family man, no priors. Clean as a whistle. But that don't mean you're innocent." Marcus met his gaze. "You ever stop to think maybe you got the wrong man?" The sergeant shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe you're just good at hiding things." Marcus leaned forward slightly, voice calm. "You're making a mistake," the sergeant chuckled. "You think I'm scared of you?" "No," Marcus said softly. "But you should be." There was something in his tone that made the sergeant pause, something cold and certain, the voice of a man who'd been face to face with death and survived. Before the sergeant could speak again, the door opened. A younger officer entered, whispering something into his ear. The sergeant frowned. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. The suspect from the Quick Mart was caught 20 minutes ago, skinny white guy, 5'9". He confessed. The room went dead quiet. The sergeant turned back toward Marcus, his smugness flickering. "You can go." Marcus stood up slowly, his every movement controlled. "You sure you don't want to search me one more time? Maybe call me another name before I leave?" The sergeant glared, but said nothing. Marcus stepped closer, until he was just inches from the man's face. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Next time you pull someone over because of what they look like, pray they're not me." He left without another word. Outside, the storm had stopped. Sharon was waiting in the parking lot, her eyes full of tears. The kids were asleep in the back seat. When Marcus opened the door, she threw her arms around him. "Oh, baby," she whispered. "What did they do to you?" He held her tight. "I'm fine." But he wasn't, not really. Because when he looked over her shoulder, he saw the sergeant watching from the doorway, that same smirk still twisting his lips. And Marcus knew it wasn't over.